You talk about this journey, and I want to talk about it, obviously, going across Antarctica, but you also talk a lot about the journey into your mind.
Yep.
Because, of course, you're solo, so I guess we would expect that. But you're also, your whole life has been about going into your mind. And I think I was surprised a bit once I know more about you, and maybe are people surprised when they find out that what you do is very cerebral as opposed to physical?
I think that there's an interesting, we have these archetypes in our mind of, the world-class athlete, and, whether it's true or not, and I think that's probably not true in a lot of cases, but we think of the biggest, strongest guy in the room, maybe a lot of sort of masculine energy of machismo. It's like, you're a fucking badass and you went out there, and pulled a sled 375 miles, you must be super hardcore. And oftentimes when people meet me, it's funny, I get some responses and it's they're trying to figure out a way to say this nice. They're like, you're a normal height, normal build, relatively soft-spoken, they're trying to say you're not the meathead that I expected you might be, basically. And I think that ultimately to crack this challenge, which yes, it is extraordinarily physically demanding, to be able to pull a 375-pound sled consecutively over 1,000 miles in the harshest climate in the world, obviously takes some intense physical capacity. But there's no way you're doing that without mastering the mind, because what's so challenging about Antarctica is, yes, it's solitude, but you've also got 24 hours of daylight, so it's daylight. There's nothing living out there. So on the interior of Antarctica, you've got no wildlife, no trees, no even bacteria living out there. It's just an endless white desert. It's actually a desert. People don't think of Antarctica that way, but it's actually the largest desert in the world. And with the 24 hours of daylight, you either got all this expansive white that's endless, or most of the time you've got high winds and snow blowing around. So you've got this really interior experience where you've got, 50, 60 mile per hour winds, minus 80-degree wind chill, and you're out there alone with nothing to see and no light even changing on the horizon. So where does your mind go when it's just blank, empty white spaces for 54 days? Yes, do you need to be physically capable to pull that sled? Absolutely. But most people, if they didn't, if I say the most important muscle that any of us has is the 6 inches between our ears. And if we don't flex and develop that, then none of the rest matters. And that's certainly true for something like this Antarctica project, where ultimately, yes, I had to have the physical tools, but if the mental broke down at any point out there, it's game over.
Right. So how do you mentally prepare for something like that?
For me, it's not like I had this Antarctica project, circled on my life bucket list calendar for decades. It's something I've been thinking about for a few years and certainly spent, a good year or so planning, in the build up to it. I did it this past year, so I, spent all of 2018 building up towards it. But before that, Vipassana meditation is something that's actually been a huge part for me. So I was a professional triathlete in between 2009 and 2015. And early in my triathlon career, a friend of mine, his wife, came and watched me race a triathlon. This Turkish woman named Ece. And she comes up to me after the race and she says, I'm not a sports fan at all. I'm only here because Zach wanted me to come see your race. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was just getting to know her at the time. And she's like, but I see that clearly all of you professional athletes, it's such a mental struggle out here as you guys are swimming and biking and running, the best athletes in the world in endurance sports really competing head to head. It's just this mental intense struggle. And she's like, I can see that on your faces. She just asked me point blank, so what are you doing to develop your mind? And I gave her some kind of rudimentary answer, I've done some visualization stuff and I work on mental toughness in my training, whatever. She's like, no, but really, what are you doing? What is your actual discipline practice for doing that? And I didn't have a good answer. And I was like, I was kind of embarrassed. And I was like, well, do you have a recommendation? And she was like, I would recommend this Vipassana meditation that I've been doing for years. And I was like, great, tell me about it. What do I do? And she was like, there's these 10-day silent meditation retreats. It's 10 days you go, no reading, no writing, no eye contact. You meditate for 12 plus hours a day. And the rest of the time you're basically in complete isolation. She's like, it's extraordinarily hard, but it teaches you the methodology for taking that into your daily life and actually practicing how to develop your mind and your self-awareness of your body. And I had never meditated a minute before in my life. I was raised in a very sort of liberal environment. I was born in a hippie commune at home with Bob Marley Redemption song playing on repeat. So I was open to these sort of ideas, but I just had never really practiced that in any meaningful way. And I said, great, this off season I'm going. And so the end of that year, when I a few weeks break from training my body and racing, I went and did my first 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And the first couple hours, you're sitting there going like, what have I got myself into? But ultimately, although very challenging, was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life and taught me so much. And it's something that I've now gone back and done repeated, several times. I try to go back, every year if I can, or every other year. But more than anything, the 10-day deep dive is immersive, and the experience of itself of those 10 days is really profound. But ultimately what it teaches you is how to incorporate that into your daily life. And I think that when we think about mental preparation, at least from my point of view, it's very easy to be like, I need to get stronger upper body, so I should do bicep curls and bench press, and I should go to the gym. That's a very common understanding. I want to get stronger, I should work out. But we think, I want to have a stronger mind. But then for some reason, there's this disconnect of like, great, so you need to work on that every single day, the same way you would on working on any other type of muscle. So for me, has been Vipassana meditation, a deep immersion into that, and then taking that into a daily practice. It doesn't necessarily have to be Vipassana meditation, although I would highly recommend it. It's completely free to go. I'd recommend it to anybody out there. There's 275 centers around the world. You can find one near you. But whether it's that or something else, mental toughness, mental acuity, mental strength grows from actually taking intentional practice towards building that. So like I said, the 6 inches between the ears, if you want to develop this muscle, you actually have to build it in the gym, effectively, the gym in some capacity, intentionally, the same way you would if you were trying to get your upper body stronger or whatnot. And I think that is a piece that oftentimes people miss.